So today, we have the pleasure to invite three veterans in metal scrap industry. I think this is a very niche but important industry that most people in the climate tech world doesn't have enough knowledge in. So it's my pleasure to have Thomas, Danny, and Ross here. And I first met Thomas and Danny through their company a year ago, and the company it has been very impressive, has impressive progress so far. So that's why I want them to have this conversation with us. How about this? Let's have some introduction for each of yourself. Thomas, do you want to start?
All right. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm a founder of Dr. Scrap, and we are a scrap recycling platform or focus on using the modern or old AI or any technology help to improve the recycling rate. So that's our mission. That's what we do. And now we are running one of the largest global scrap metal trading platform, and also are doing some pretty advantage and cool things in the AI. How use the AI to change the recycling industry and improving the recycling rate. So that's about us.
Awesome. Danny, do you want to go the second?
Yeah, sure, sure. I'm Daniel Lin, one of the founders of Dr. Scrap, but my background is mainly in physical operations scrap. I started because you were asking why I got into the industry. Well, I had to pay bills. Wife was pregnant, family's in the business. I've mostly stayed in physical operation and processing, not that big on trading. And I joined Dr. Scrap mainly because it's a really interesting approach, and the technologies seem to be at a stage where a lot of the manual labor or traditional training programs could be digitized, and that's how I joined. And so far, we're also working with Simcoe Resources in the United States to facilitate trades and develop systems.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Ross?
Yeah, my name's Ross Gunther. My background is very confused. I got lost in Japan a long time and I wound up in the recycling industry. I worked in one of the larger, big Japanese trading houses, which I was very grateful for, to basically learn the fundamentals of trade. So recycling, as we'll talk about later, and Danny and Thomas, everyone in this business knows is extremely complicated. So how do you make complicated things simple? There's hundreds and hundreds of years of recycling, and that knowledge, yeah, thousands, right? And so I was lucky enough to get trained by a lot of the best, as Danny and Thomas also were, in different countries. And now I'm with a company called Simcoe Resources. They're one of the larger Midwest processors, traders, mainly specializing in complex fractions, but also standard fractions too. Very large steel company. I do a little bit more of the buying and selling overseas for them, and then watching the overseas processing along with Thomas and Danny. We all work very closely together.
So Ross, since you mentioned that your journey was kind of confusing, that makes me curious. Why did you get into this industry?
Well, I think recycling is how do I want to say this? There's two stories in recycling. There's the optics of recycling and the realities of recycling. And this is something that the the optics of recycling are that everything's going to go perfectly, and everything just, you drop it in your bin and it goes to a furnace and we get a new aluminum can, or we get a Honda. Like, people's perception is actually not by anyone's fault, but it's the optics are that it's quite simple. But then there's a contradictory optics that everyone that drives by a scrapyard is a little bit scared. And Danny actually taught me this because he did, especially in operations, you're public facing or OEM facing. And so a lot of people that are not in the day-to-day recyclings, they go by a scrapyard and they're a bit nervous and it looks dangerous. It maybe looks a little bit dirty. And that's more of the reality of what it means to save the world. Because each fraction that comes into, I shouldn't say each, but most of the fractions that come into a yard are complex. Like I was trying to think of some fun facts for your podcast, and it was something like the average car has over 300 types of plastics. So people that are in the plastics business know that even commingling two types of plastics can destroy your product, your end product that will become a PET bottle or, a new dashboard. So you can see in that one example how hard it is. So that's where Thomas is coming in, trying to bring in technology, with the know-how of operations people, bringing technology in to simplify this process. And so I guess going back to, why it's confusing is I think it's not a career path that is immediately discussed in elementary school or middle school or high school or even college. And ultimately the college route produces the engineers that absorb and use the scrap. But the people that collect it and upgrade it and prepare it for the next Honda or the next Ford or the next Dell computer or Intel or whatever the final products which uses all these metals are, that is a very, I don't want to say secretive, but it's a very interesting, unique community of knowledge. And it's something that is mainly through tutelage and on-the-job training. Again, that's where Thomas's product gets very interesting because it allows you to bypass to a degree a lot of that hard won on-the-job training with the help of AI.
Yeah. And I think what Ross is talking about is in order for recycling to be really effective, environmentally sound, the consumer must really know more about what they're consuming. And the problem was that industries tend to portray a way cleaner image than it really is. So yesterday we were at this smart and livable city presentation.
In Bangkok.
Right.
He gave a presentation yesterday.
And so we were looking at some of the presentations over there about plastic recycling, and we looked at it and I'd say like, they're presenting too clean of an image of it. And unless consumers care about the environment, actually know what they're using and how it's being recycled and collected, and what the limitations are of the technology, you are not going to have responsible designs that are designed for recycling. You're not going to have cities planning the zoning and the industries to properly service the waste. And so you have this disconnect, which is the optics of recycling for the consumer side is it's all clean, the bottles are great. We actually saw this.
Give the example of the PET bottles.
Right. They had this basket, 2 baskets of PET bottles.
And just for everyone who's not a recycler, PET bottles are
like
here, we can show you right here.
These guys.
Yeah.
So it's a plastic bottle that usually contains the beverage, right?
So for example, we talked to one customer yesterday who wanted a solution. And she showed us the equipment that she wanted to buy and the test runs, and we immediately pointed out, wait, the test run that your equipment vendor is showing you are actual finished products, clean products, co-mingled, then separate again. But in reality, they're a garbage company. In Thailand, everything is co-mingled together with garbage, with all
wood chip, wood, mattresses, computers. And the machine is only showing brand new bottles going in.
That's the easiest way for.
And we told her, we were like, yeah, it's like this doesn't exist. They probably used brand new bottles.
Right, pour the water out.
Poured the water out, and then they showed how it worked. And she's like, yeah, it's really not easy. And that's the thing that I think the public is slowly coming to grips with, is that I think to a degree people understand that the ideal and the optics of perfection need to be reconciled with the realities of when those PET bottles come in. We need people that are very well trained, protected, taken care of, and then also machines to assist them to do this sorting, because in the end, no plastics consumer can take a mattress. It doesn't work that way. They can't take wood chips.
Right.
We don't want to drink wood chips in our tea. So it's complicated.
And unless the public is aware of these things, the government is going to enact laws that are counterproductive.
Yes.
They're not going to give the subsidies that are necessary for collection, sorting, and research. And all they're doing right now, for at least in the state of California, is they're basically dishing out fines and proposing draconian laws that are actually counterproductive. So if you look at, in this case, if the public might think that California is a very clean state, which it is a clean state, but California is not really processing or consuming a good chunk of its scrap. What is it doing? it's basically exporting all the waste. And so the public thinks that California is doing a good job.
We jump into the real topic right
Yeah,
now.
let's do it one by one. Sorry.
Let's take a step back. I'm excited right now. So yeah, this is a great segue. That's why we need this podcast, right? We need to demystify this very, a seemingly archaic and complex industry. I guess for most people, just like me as a consumer, if I don't understand the whole value chain, I don't understand what it takes to recycle, let's say, a PET bottle, then I have no say, no knowledge for a better policy, right? So as a voter, so let's take a step back and let's talk a little bit about, let's share with the audience about the macro environment. Can you share a little bit about how this whole value chain looks like, and what are the major trading routes, in the globe?
Oh dear. All right, I'm put on the spot.
I'll give some numbers. It's a $1 trillion per year business,
Mm-hmm.
400 billion of which crosses boundaries. The recycling rate, depending on how you calculate it, could be anywhere from 30 to 50%.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a known, a guess.
US, 30 to 50. A lot of other countries not even close.
Yeah, I mean, some are like 5%, some are at 3%, and some countries like Japan are surprisingly low, which I didn't realize until recently. Yeah.
Yes.
Japan is 20%.
20%.
And they're super good at residential scrap, but not much on the industry scrap.
I see. So I would assume that the major way to deal with the rest, that's at 80% or 60%, are landfill. What are other ways to recycle? Or furnace?
Incineration plant.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
And
that's one of the yeah, a lot of the harder I think recycling has, correct me, Thomas and Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, but recycling is supported one of maybe the 2 or 3 ways, depending on how you think about it. The first way is through subsidies. So a community like Japan or Germany or China or wherever, right? Even on the province or state level, California, Utah, the community decides, what are we going to do with this problem? So we have waste, and what are we going to do with it? Are we going to allow the intrinsic values? And what I mean by intrinsic for listeners is copper has a value on the market. Mm-hmm. Steel has a value on the market. And that value changes every day. Are we going to let that support how we deal with waste? Mm-hmm. Or are we going to just say, look, we don't want to bury it in the ground, and maybe we don't want to put it in our electric plants to provide electricity. One of the really great ways, at least Europe and Japan, I can't speak to other areas, maybe Danny and Thomas can, is a lot of countries have enormous power plants that they're able to use all of the plastic, packaging, random things that you put in your garbage. They use massive bag houses to control the emissions, and then they generate energy, and then you don't have to landfill. Yeah. But in places like California, for example, the public hasn't really been able to find that middle ground between landfilling, just to be frank with you, landfilling and using it for something better. So we don't have very many of those plants, and the waste to energy generation plants that we do have are actually being shut down right now, which is quite shocking when you really think about that. We prefer just to bury things, which is, it's very different than the image. But going back to the point of value is so we either have intrinsic value, which is the metals inside, or the plastics or whatever. Even wood has value. There's intrinsic value in wood chips for making furniture, or waste to energy, generation. So each society has to decide, which way are we going to do it? Are we going to do it based on intrinsics, or are we going to do it based on community support? And so all I'm saying is that each country, that dynamic of what society decides is going to happen will determine the recycling rate. So generally, countries that have higher recycling rates have better government community support, because recyclers don't have to necessarily worry about, what if copper drops value in half? How am I going to pay for my truck? How am I going to pay for my workers, right?
Yeah.
They already know they have a cushion or a support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'll let Danny and Thomas jump in, I don't want to talk too much longer, but these dynamics will then influence which routes the scrap or the recycled goods will take.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Ross is pointing at is, again, like the global recycling market, a lot of the products, if you only let the intrinsic value decide the operation, in order to be compliant, but also operate, sometimes you have to charge your consumers, right? And currently, for a lot of products, there are no good ways to charge a customer. So, for example, California has the 5 cent bill, the bottle bill. And what it does is it's not enough of a subsidy to subsidize the recycling of certain bottles, certain type plastic. But what it also does, it creates an artificial market. So there are times where when the intrinsic value of the bottles are so low, but let's say I'm a recycler and he's a recycler, we actually use the subsidy, the 5 cents, or either by per pound or per unit, go out and buy. So we crush our margins to a level, and then the product during certain periods, they lose their marketable value and they become just inventory or just waste. And then some of them then still go into landfill. And so and also when California, but not just California, when the government decides to enact certain laws to make it more stringent for operators to survive in the area, scrap processors, our prices generally are set by the commodity price.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a value reduction model. And so when you change the laws, you increase my cost in a very violent manner. My cap is right here. Commodity is basically my cap. And you're basically, through these laws, you're removing the intrinsic margin that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where a lot of the governments, and I think globally, where you have a big problem why the recycling rate is so low, because if you're only on an intrinsic value model, on a profitability model, a lot of scrap dealers or scrap processors, we just can't afford to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you join some of the conversations in California, especially the CRB conversations, you'll see that exactly. We tell them that the laws you've enacted or the way you're operating it is making it not profitable. So during COVID period, where it was very difficult to operate, a lot of recycling centers simply decertified and saying, like, we don't want to be a part of this again. And we told them that the way you're paying us and regulating us is not working. And this is not just in this state of California, this is a global issue. That the government and the people, in order for the whole, let's say we're talking about $1 trillion a year. Let's say the market is actually at 2 trillion.
10 trillion.
Probably even bigger than that.
10 trillion. If you're looking at all of the items
that are recyclable,
massive,
it's a massive market. But just like mines, if copper prices or iron prices drop below a certain level, certain mines will no longer produce the value to warrant the investment. And what do you do with that mine? You give it up.
Mm-hmm.
Recycling is in a similar situation.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the public pitches this, there's always money in it, which is not true.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we touched it a lot of time. But before that, I think for the audience, most of them are not in this industry. Can you tell us a bit about, like, I think in the value chain, there are scrap yards, there are MRFs, there are, traders. Can you share a little bit about that, the whole value chain? Give an overview of the value chain, and now I have some follow-up questions.
We can start with the
investor come to my office, ask me that question. Not just the publics, everybody trying to understand. And I find out it's actually in those picture books the elementary school gave out, in US at least. It's from, there's 5 major parties. Mm-hmm. It's from the manufacturer or the residential, whoever use the whatever the product is, to recycler, to processor, to smelter, or whoever can make it into material, raw material, then the product manufacturer, then to the real manufacturer. Then the circle runs like that. And we all come from, I'm not sure all of us, but we all being part of the in-between process. Danny has represented the running scrapyard, which is a recycler. I start from a trading firm, then get into scrapyard, then even the trading firm have a different parties. In one country, they have exporter as a trading firm, and the internationalized between countries, they have those international trading firm. Then on another destination country, they have importing traders. So the traders are in between of those five guys, and also those five guys can do the business. Don't have to follow those steps, but they can from the recyclers go directly to the smelters, which is doable. And also sometimes we have run a project named Can to Can from the use of beverage can to directly the can sheet manufacturer. Those can be done as well. But those are the major five parties from my eye, and also all the trading firms in between.
I see. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so the follow-up question to I think what Danny and also Ross just shared about how hard it is, right? Like you had to make sure that if you focus on intrinsic values of those recyclable, but then at the same time these are commodities, so you have to also make sure that you can sell in a good price. And then so if we go fully, let's say 100% market economy, then probably a lot of scrapyard may not be able to operate in the market. I think these are the challenges. Can you also share a bit about the margin? Like, what's the margin, let's say, between, let's say, from a scrapyard to, let's say, toward traders, or from traders all the way to, the other side of the business?
Yes.
So it really depends. So there are areas where you're making, in some cases, 800% returns. There are situations where you pay $300 and you sell it for $2,000, $4,000. There are those specialty situations. Generally speaking, you're talking about 20 to 30% gross profit.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about gross profit, it also depends on every facility, every type of material has a different cost of operation. So for example, steel would have a huge gross profit margin, but the gross profit margin could be eroded by regulations, by compliance packages, by safety measures, right? But in general, 20 to 30 is a pretty common
Mm-hmm.
number.
Mm-hmm.
Of certain facilities have an even higher margin because the clientele that they're servicing our community where they're less price sensitive. In those cases, a 30 to 50% margin is very, very common. Volume would be a little lower, but it depends on which stage you're talking about. And there are also companies who literally pay 7 cents a pound for steel and then flip it for 20 on a very regular basis. It also depends on your location. Certain scrapyards, in order for you to get to some place, you got to go through that city. And so, for example, Simco Resources, we actually placed our facilities very strategically. We don't compete in the most contested areas. We simply set our facilities where, in order for you to get to the port, you must go by us. So then, in a sense, we provide a logistical savings for our consumers. And for that, we command a premium.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, on average, 20-30% gross profit is a pretty constant figure.
Thank you. Oh,
Danny, just curious.
please
Do
go
you think
ahead.
on the recycling side, on the retail side, do you think it can reach even higher number? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, so so if you look at a yearly return basis, and if you set up your facility in a densely populated area, you should be able, if you do it right and you manage your data and you service your clients, you should be able to make 100% return in a year. And this is not a joke because we've actually done this. We've collected data for about 8 years, and it was millions of entries. And we ran the transactions and modeled it, and we determined, and we implemented for about 2 to 3 years. So the profitability went up in that. The net profit, actually, the gross profit went up 250%, and the net profit went up about 700%. Because again, they were working on a very tight margin control market, but what happened was that their cost of operation due to regulations and markets went up drastically. And so it was at a point where we advised the operators, say, well, you have two routes here. I said, we're looking at a return on investment. We said, Well, you may as well just sell the property or develop it, like, because this return doesn't make sense. It's, no, we're not going to do that. Like, okay, then we said, then you need to expand your margins. So we gave them like a very somewhat overly detailed presentation. But what really clicked was, sir, you can make this much instead of this much a year. You might lose these clients who are not really profitable.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thesis turned out to be not only did they not lose any customers, but they did in fact increase their net profit by 700%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so to answer
80,
Thomas's
20.
question,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so it's absolutely possible.
Mm-hmm.
And actually what happened when you manage these data properly, scrap dealers tend to have a bidding mentality. If I don't win this material, I'm not going to survive. But the truth of the matter is, like any other business, sometimes you have to have the courage to lose some business.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, if you're providing the service, you have to charge for the profit. You have to charge for the service. So
Yeah.
the answer is it's absolutely possible if you have the data. It can be it. I hate to say this, but clients are highly manipulable if you know what you're looking at.
But that only happens in recycling.
I think Ross and Danny and Thomas, you share a lot about the macro, more the macro view of this industry, and also you touch upon some real challenges in the industry. I want to move into the next topic about the new technology in metal scrap recycling. And I think this is also like, Thomas and Danny, you guys are working on Dr. Scrap project, and you guys are doing something very innovative in the industry. So can you share a little bit about what you guys are working on and what other opportunities that should be innovated in the metal scrap industry?
I'll let Danny to start. Why do you join us? What make you
Well,
have that imagination?
so my last job was at Air Metals, and Air Metals is, and to this day, even though me and the owner have some issues, but he's one of the best teachers I ever had. And he's one of their company is one of the very few companies who actually focus on like really detailing their purchases, their sortations, their quality control is top notch, and they have very, very low claim rates compared to industry standard. And what he did was he actually surprisingly made kind of like a supermarket style recycling center. And he standardized a lot of the purchases, in which is very, very rare for retail operations of that sort. And he's very customer facing, he's very retail facing. And so when Thomas mentioned Dr. Scrap to me, for my perspective was that the technology is finally probably at a state. He did a few demos, and it showed to me that it is possible to standardize recycling procedures, however complicated it is. It's extremely difficult to train a personnel. So, for example, if you have a
Wait,
if
sorry,
you
sorry
want to
to
train a
stop
good
you here. Then you sorry to stop here. Can you introduce the product first? And otherwise, I think the
Oh,
audience.
actually, I would let Thomas introduce because I'll introduce from why, from an operator's perspective, it's a good product.
Hmm. Yeah, Thomas, do you want to talk
So
about it? Hmm.
as Danny speak, and a lot of the owners I have interviewed too, I ask them like, how did you get into the business? Almost 100% answer is the same. It's self-taught, and myself is the same. Self-taught. And I ask them, what's the biggest challenge? No one can teach this thing. So that's exactly what our product is doing, is basically let you to have a tool to have which combine all the experts' knowledge together and allow you to just take picture or videos or use any method to get image of pile of whatever scrap. Then you can have the knowledge of what it is, how should I categorize it, how should I sort it, and how should I analyze the price and what the price is, and eventually to find someone to match to the best buyer in the market at the moment to realize those price. So that's the simple way to explain our product, but actually combined with some app, which it's like two type of app, ERP type of app. Now we have those drone app and connect with a platform. Those app is like connections, let you to connect the AI model with the reality, the real world scrap, then digitalize it into the platform, match to the best buyer, then sell to the best buyer. We handle all the logistic documentation and all that. So it's kind of the AI plus a platform to make this happen. So that's
Can you tell like
what we are doing in the past.
No, I mean just
Go
my
ahead.
question is that can you tell your product seems to be like comprehensive. You kind of like a trading you help do the trading, right, for both sides for demand and supply. But then how do you facilitate that? What kind of technology you're using to help to facilitate this trading? What makes you different from other trading platforms? Or as traders, you used to be a trader. What's the technology behind this?
All right, so let me give you two sides. One side is from the customer, Anheuser-Busch, ABI, Budweiser. They're using us and saying, okay, your product is super simple, 4 steps on our side. They're doing internal training. 1, scan, take picture. 2nd, get price. 3rd, get shipment. 4, get paid. That's on the customer side. Our side is really complicated. When they scan, we use the computer vision to first decode the scrap and analyze what's inside of it, which is an intrinsic value Ross just mentioned. Then we tag them, push those tags to different type of buyer, which we calculate. That's another AI models to do the matching to find out who is the best one. Then because we handle so many countries, so now we service over 160 countries. Then it's thanks to the new big AI thing, we're using the AI agentic. So those agents in all different channels are pushing those tags to different buyers all over the world and telling them this may good for you. Then doing all the conversations. After those conversations, we pick up one of the best to match to make the deal. Then after that, now that part is still manual. So it's a fulfillment. We use some of the AI, but it's a traditional type of AI, OCR, document checking, and so on and so on. So that's become logistic, documents, payments. We're trying to first get those AI agents work without us or work like doing 80% of work. And that's the current thing we're doing. And after we get that part done, then we'll probably use those big models to help us to handling the fulfillment, logistic, and documents. So that's about behind of it.
I see. Thank you. Thank you for explaining your product. So you're basically using go ahead.
I would just add one thing, I think, because Thomas has always, he himself has always been known as kind of the problem solver for all the oddballs. And so in a traditional trader will basically hide all those information. It's hard to audit because oddballs tend to be the more profitable.
Explain what an oddball is.
It basically is non-spec material. It's not something like a regular copper bright and shiny #1 or talking about cast aluminum. It's usually complex material or either complex fractions or just things you don't see on a daily basis. So Thomas has always been known to be able to find the right markets for it. And so what Dr. Scrap does really, really well is traditionally traders or even what we call the traveling salesman will go to each facility and they will look at the material. And so that part of the market is actually where the recycling rate is, why it's so low, because it's hard to identify. And even if you have a trader who knows what it is, these tend to be considered like trade secrets and are only traded through very specific routes. So what Dr. Scrap can do is we have it in the database, we have it in the algorithm, and so it would be way easier for any user of the app to actually identify what the material is, where the downstream market should be. And so we're basically democratizing the channels, and that is currently not done by traditional traders because traditional traders it's against their interest to actually publicize these things. And a lot of the end users actually want to buy these products, but because of the traders in between, they actually don't know where it's from, what kind of volume we're looking at. And so that's one thing that Dr. Scrap does very, very well. It actually does help to unlock the potential of these difficult to recognize products.
But my question is, if let's say those traders can benefit from trade secrets or like the secrecy of the real values of the trades, then if you provide this product, I guess there will be some contradicting. They probably would not. I assume some of the traders will not accept your product because you're taking off the margin they can collect from the market.
Yes and
Traders
no.
actually are the first takers, so they are the most active one on the platform, and they use us on only one side. They still use their traditional way on the supply side, but they fully use us on the sell side.
I see.
So they use us to find those best matches.
And also, just for example, so when you're looking at oddballs, traditional products, spec products are hyper competitive and very low margins. And so for any trader who wants to make an extra buck, you have a tool who can actually locate new material, locate new markets for you. And so the collapse of the supply chain is not something that Dr. Scrap is doing. The simplification, the collapsing of the supply chains is a global trend. So if from a trader's perspective, if they want to stick to their original routes, they're simply going to die. There's not going to be margin. There's not going to be new markets for them. So in fact, instead of dying with the collapsing, instead of being kind of weeded out by the trends of the market, we actually provide a way for traders to find new markets. So that there is a conflict there, but for traders who are smart enough, they would actually join.
I see. Thank you.
A
And
lot of them.
so basically your product is solving, the kind of like valuation, right? You provide a more accurate valuation of each transaction. But apart from that, where do you think that this industry need to be innovated? What are other part of the value chain that you think there are opportunities for founders to do something?
First of
Oh my
all,
God, this is huge
standardization of
opportunities right
operations.
now.
Go ahead.
Okay, I got a call. So I visited a bunch of, I visited 32 scrapyard in this winter, back to February. Asked the same question to all of them. If I have, now we already have the computer vision pretty robust. We show them, okay, for any type of scrap mixture, and then we take photo and it can segregate everything and telling your sorter how to sort. And ask them, if I have an arm, robotic arm can sort it for you, I sell for how much, which I can tell you. Would you buy? 30 out from 32 say, I place order right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I see, the next thing. And we're trying to build it. But it's a new challenge for us.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
That's
But
so
then
yes.
you-
No, sorry. So when me and Ross were at the sustainability meeting yesterday, that this so when people are coming to us asking for solutions, the conversation then goes to a robotic arms because not only do you want to be able to identify the material, you actually want to standardize the sorting.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing in Thailand, they were talking about labor cost issues because it is going up for them as well. So I totally agree with Thomas on that one because that was exactly where almost all of our conversations led to yesterday, providing solutions, how to identify. The next thing would be to have robotic arms.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at population dynamics in a lot of countries,
We're not making enough babies here.
yeah, we're not a lot of the largest waste producing places will not have enough of the next generation to even clean up my generation or my parents' generation's problems. And that's where, again, like I think every single yard, whether it's from a small yard to a massive yard,
Mm-hmm.
or multiple yards, multiple massive yards, when you have inbound of thousands and thousands of metric tons a day, okay, you can see as an owner or a shareholder or an investor, whatever, you start maybe not sleeping as well when you think, well, what if 20% of my workforce doesn't show up tomorrow?
Union
Not because you're, unionized or whatever. I mean, those we're making light of it, but really every industry, whether it's McDonald's or, there's so many industries are reporting like
robots who need
we cannot
upgrades.
find enough people.
Right.
There's not enough people to do work. And that's where we, like Thomas said, I think it was his words, is you're gonna have to swim with these trends. It's a wave. This wave is gonna destroy us, but we can choose to surf on it or not. You know what I mean? So AI, after scrap, the more transparent realities of day to day, whether it's to the public or to the end users or to us as processors in the middle, we need to open up about it and share and then figure out how we're going to survive.
Yeah, and part of it is that the traditional shredding and mechanical sorting has reached its limit to a certain degree. Like, there are fractions that come out where like you can still sort it, but your throughput is going to be 10% of what the system's designed for you because there's just too much to go through. And a lot of it can be solved by before feeding these material into the shredder. And that a large part of that is still, even in the States, done through manual labor. I mean, you can have handlers. Then that's just where it goes back to if you have AI plus robotic arms, you will almost 100% eliminate the need for human labor there. What you'll then need are just engineers and supervisors or the people who maintain the equipment. It would drastically increase your consistency of sorting and lower your overall operation costs. And with AI, you'll be able to monitor the inputs and outputs.
And it also will allow us to prevent massive. This was always the thing with Thomas's technology that I always thought was really, really interesting. A lot of times in recycling, from when we accept material from the public, we will not find out the mistake we've made until it goes into a furnace to make a new Toyota or to make a new, BYD or whatever. That could be 3-4 months, the feedback loop between, oh, our workers made a mistake in the yard, our machine made a mistake, someone went and had a coffee break and nobody watched, the machine for a few minutes, and somehow a bunch of copper got in the steel. But with what this can do is we have the ability to catch ourselves before it gets shipped out, and it takes that 1 or 2 month journey to
few minutes.
Nippon Steel or Korea Zinc or whoever, right? The AI and machine learning can look at the fraction and be like, hey, there's a color change. You might want to have someone look at that. Even that most simple feature, which is not simple at all, it takes huge amount of experts to train the systems to because again, a lot of this is secretive knowledge and complicated knowledge. You need experts to train the computers, but then all of that knowledge will not be lost to a coffee break. It's not a coffee break that has caused a 80% loss for my company. We're saved.
And basically, traditionally, when a scrap facility manager spots anomalies, it's usually through production, or we see something wrong in the end product, or we see something wrong with the pricing or what. And what do? We then go back to the videos, and it could take hours to spot.
Days.
Yeah, there were situations.
Days to try to find out where did our operation have a problem.
And employees in general like to hide the facts. They're like cats who bury their poop. And so they have an vested interest in lying to you, right? And so when you have the system who has the expertise in identifying material, they can catch the mistakes immediately. And something that takes 3 months, a day, 2 days, 3 days, it's within minutes we'll know, maybe within seconds we'll know. And so that also then tells the employees that we're watching, and you don't even have to catch all the mistakes. 3 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 2 out of 10 is enough for the employee to know that I'm not going to get away with this. And that also helps them to say, when they do make a mistake, they come clean. And so overall, it then produces a higher quality product, a more homogeneous product. And then it is actually better for the consumer side as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, there's this like Thomas said, there's an educational aspect to it, right? With the help of machines, when a mistake is made, before the employee feels like, oh, I just lost the company,
$500.
whatever, a big amount of money, the machine will actually make it what's called a teachable moment,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Where it says, hey, have a look at this. And then you can go get your manager and be like, hey, Dr. Scrap told me that, there's this in the fraction. What do I do, boss? Or can you give me advice? Oh, let's rerun it. Let's just rerun it.
Yeah.
It'll take a few hours, but let's rerun it. And then everybody wins,
I see.
from the new employee not
Mhm.
having feedback to the boss who has to answer to shareholders about, losses, claims, etc.
Now they can go
I
play
think,
golf.
I
Yeah,
think,
more golf.
but so you stop here. I just want to conclude our conversation today. We talk about the macros, the ABCs, the basics of this industry, some of the challenges of the industry, and so your product, right? And let's conclude this conversation. What do you think the future, let's say after 10 years, how do you think this industry would look like? What are all the same stakeholders that we know will still remain in the market, or how would the process being simplified or even more complex, given the deglobalization that we're seeing?
I think the deglobalization is not the problem because the recycling rate is so low, the demand is always higher than supply. So, to my eye, if the technology has a breakthrough as we imagined, then standardize the operation of recycling, which our dream is make you open a 70% gross margin recycling yard as easy as you open McDonald's, then the thing's gonna have a big change. Otherwise, if no technology breakthrough, I've been in this industry for almost 20 years. I don't see any changes at all. So if no technology breakthrough, they're gonna keep the same and same players.
Cool.
Well,
That's my view.
How
I
about
think
Danny and Ross? What do you guys think? Assuming that some of the technology and hopefully, Dr. Sui can go pretty well in the future, how would the industry look
so.
like?
I think for scrap yards, every scrapper is trying to reduce the workforce. And so if the robotic arms actually started being deployed, you'll see again, I think you're gonna have a higher consistency in the way we're buying, we're processing, we're outputting, you're lowering the costs. And so that would also allow more facilities to adopt a standardized method of operation. And so overall, from my perspective, it's a much better way. But the question that I had was that different countries have different interests or different appetites for technology. Would the US actually allow us to have them? Because then you have to take care of the laborers, they're going to have union issues, you have both issues. This seems like something that can be better done in China, actually, where if the government does support it, you'll have a much higher rate of conversion. Plus, the subsidy is always there. It has its issues, but as we're talking about, a lot of these projects actually require subsidies because of the nature of the intrinsic value, how it's designed on a reduction basis. Whether or not this would happen in the United States, I have questions. I do think there's a much better chance for this to happen in China. And I think that would be next 10 years. And I should not say more than what I just said. Yeah.
Yeah, as from my perspective, someone at a conference told me this a few years ago when we were talking about the future, and he said something that just like stayed with me. He said, money is smarter than all of us.
Yeah.
And that idea that money's smarter than all of us, I think it just shows that, money's numbers, right? And so you're looking at all these different issues, right? Intrinsics, reuse, labor costs, and then ultimately the consumers, the furnaces, the extruders, all the people that help make all these wonderful products that we use every day. And these corporations are landless, right? So we're always moving, corporations are always moving around. Shipping issues, right? Ship routes are changing every day. The rise of India has caused massive disruptions for container availability in certain markets. And so what I would just say is predicting these things are for probably larger minds, but I will say that as recyclers and for societies, I think we're all looking for a hack. You know what I mean? We're trying to hack the numbers to make recycling make sense every day. Whether, like Danny said, it's subsidies, or like Thomas is trying to provide a hack to allow more transparency, easier documentation, easier material analysis, a lot of different things. So the race is just trying to figure out that catalyst, right?
Mhm.
And I think that looking even at like most scrap yards, the hack is fundamentally technology, right?
Mhm.
It's machines, it's computers, it's cameras, it's X-ray, it's drones. And I mean, because ultimately these are the things that are lowering our costs to
Yeah.
provide the service to the public and then to our shareholders or,
Mhm.
our private owners and whatnot,
And,
or public owners for that matter, right?
Mhm.
and those technologies also have the potential to provide higher transparency.
Yeah.
Machines are way better than humans in documenting things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I know we spent more than an hour on this conversation, but thank you so much for Thomas, for Danny, for Ross, especially you guys are all like traveling around. Thank you again for your time.